Back in 1962, a fire started beneath a small Pennsylvania town. 63 years later, that fire is still burning and smoke keeps rising from cracks in the ground where homes once stood. Some towns in America, well, they don't just die quietly. They collapse, they burn, they poison their folks, or just plain vanish overnight with no explanation at all. And the people who still live nearby, they'll flat out tell you to stay away. Now, real talk here. Most folks will watch this, get a little creeped out, then scroll on by and forget about it by tomorrow. But if you're the kind who actually wants to dig in and understand the dark economic forces that turn once thriving communities into haunted wastelands, go ahead and hit subscribe. 'Cause what you're about to hear isn't just spooky stories. It's America's hidden collapse, one small town at a time. And number one? Well, the government literally erased it from the map. This ain't about haunted houses or campfire tales. We're talking real American towns, places with post offices, schools, and families that became so dangerous, so toxic, or so cursed that even folks who'd lived there forever just up and left. We're talking underground fires that just won't quit. Lead poisoning so bad whole populations had to evacuate, and towns where the crime rate is 7 times higher than the national average. Today we're counting down 18 of the creepiest small towns in America, from ghost towns frozen in time to places where folks still live but warn you not to visit after dark. Some are abandoned, some are toxic, and some are just waiting for you to make a wrong turn. Trust me, number one is so contaminated the entire town was wiped clean off the map by the U.S. government and declared uninhabitable for the next 1,000 years. So why does this happen? Well, it's simple. When industries collapse, mines shut down, or disasters hit, whole communities just can't bounce back. Populations drop, crime goes up, buildings start to rot. What's left behind is a warning nobody wants to hear. You throw in some ghost stories, unsolved murders, or environmental disasters, and you end up with the perfect storm for a place folks quietly tell you to stay away from. These aren't just random creepy spots. They're economic graveyards, left behind by failing infrastructure, government neglect, toxic industries, and demographic collapse. Some lost their reason to exist. Others, honestly, probably never should have existed in the first place. Welcome to the darkest side of the American dream. Number 18. Dudleytown, Connecticut. This place isn't on GPS, not because of some glitch, but because it's a warning. Founded way back in the 1740s, Dudleytown was abandoned by the early 1900s after a string of mysterious deaths, suicides, and disappearances that locals still won't talk about. These days, it's private property, surrounded by thick woods, and trespassing is flat-out illegal. Why? Folks call it the Village of the Damned. Families who lived there told stories of insanity, unexplained deaths, and paranormal happenings so intense they ran off in the dead of night. Population today? 0. Access? Illegal. Legend? Cursed. One hiker who tried sneaking in said the forest just went dead silent. No birds, no wind, just fog, and the feeling somebody was watching. It's Connecticut's version of a horror movie, except the keep-out signs are real, and the state police mean business. Thick fog drifting through old stone foundations. No sound. Just you, the trees, and the gut feeling that something's just not right. Dudleytown doesn't want you there. And folks around here will tell you that's probably for the best. Would you hike into Dudleytown if you had the chance? Drop your answer in the comments, but don't say we didn't warn you. Number 17. Skagway, Alaska. Now, this is a gold rush town where, honestly, paranormal reports seem to spike every winter and, well, locals blame cabin fever mixed with something darker. Skagway really boomed during the Klondike Gold Rush back in the 1890s, but these days it's an isolated tourist town with some seriously eerie off-season vibes. The population is around 1,200 in the summer, but, it drops to just 400 in the winter when the tourists leave and the darkness really sets in. Median rent hovers somewhere around $1,000 to $1,300, and sure, the crime rate is technically low, but locals report increased paranoia and strange occurrences during those long winter months. The tourism-dependent economy just collapses off-season, leaving the town feeling abandoned, even though folks still live there. Visitors say buildings creak like they're alive. One shop owner swears up and down she hears footsteps upstairs when no one's there. Gold rush ghosts and seasonal depression, that's Alaska's creepiest combination right there. Just imagine months of near-total darkness, empty streets, the sound of wind howling through wooden buildings, or heck, is it something else? Skagway in winter feels like the whole town is holding its breath, just waiting. Could you handle an Alaskan winter in Skagway? Let us know if you're brave enough or just crazy enough. Number 16. Mineral Wells, Texas. This place is home to a massive abandoned insane asylum that, well, locals say is still haunted by its patients. Once a health resort town known for its crazy water mineral springs, Mineral Wells is now home to the decaying Baker Hotel and the former Wichita Falls State Hospital. The population sits at around 15,000, and median home prices are about $150,000, but the town's biggest attraction is a 14-story hotel that's been abandoned since 1972. The Baker Hotel is rumored to be one of the most haunted buildings in Texas. No joke. Urban explorers report cold spots, shadow figures, and even the feeling of being pushed down staircases by unseen hands. The asylum adds another layer of dread. Patients who died there are said to still wander the halls at night. When your town's biggest attraction is a haunted hotel, you just know tourism peaked a century ago. Picture a 14-story Art Deco hotel, windows all shattered, curtains swaying in rooms nobody's entered in 50 years. The wind whistles through empty hallways, and you can almost hear the echoes of conversations from 1920. Would you explore the Baker Hotel at night? Comment below, but bring a flashlight and, heck, maybe a priest. Number 15. Cairo, Illinois. This is a town where the violent crime rate was over 600% higher than the national average. Once a thriving river port at the confluence of the Mississippi and Ohio rivers, Cairo has been in economic freefall since the 1960s. Today it's a shell of boarded-up buildings and collapsing infrastructure. The population is just under 1,500, way down from 15,000 back in the 1920s. That's a population decline of over 3% every year, for decades. The vacancy rate is over 70%, so most buildings are just plain abandoned. Median home price? $33,000. The poverty rate is 45%, nearly 4 times the national average. Crime rates for aggravated assault, arson, and robbery are, honestly, drastically above state averages. Locals say driving through Cairo feels like a zombie apocalypse set. Buildings rotting, streets empty, no one around. The only town where $33,000 buys you a house and a guarantee that no one wants to visit you. Driving at dusk through streets lined with crumbling Victorian homes, every window boarded, every yard overgrown. It feels like the apocalypse already happened and, well, everyone forgot to tell you. Would you buy a house in Cairo for $33,000? Be honest in the comments. The ground is literally on fire, and it won't stop burning for another 250 years. Back in 1962, a coal mine fire ignited beneath Centralia. It's still burning today, releasing toxic fumes and creating sinkholes that can, believe it or not, swallow cars. The population is down to somewhere between 4 and 6 residents, from over 1,000 in 1980. The fire covers 400 acres underground and releases carbon monoxide and sulfur dioxide through cracks in the ground. Most homes have been demolished or condemned. The town was officially disincorporated, and its zip code was revoked by the federal government. One remaining resident said, "The smoke rises from my yard every morning. I'm used to it now." When your town's biggest feature is eternal hellfire, you know the real estate market is, well, tough. Cracked roads with steam rising through the pavement, abandoned homes with overgrown yards, and a welcome to Silent Hill vibe, except it's real and the smoke smells like sulfur. Centralia is a living nightmare that refuses to die. Literally. Would you visit Centralia for the day? Let us know, but don't breathe too deep. one of Colorado's best-preserved ghost towns, and paranormal investigators say it's one of the most actively haunted places in America. Abandoned in the 1920s after mining and railroad operations ceased, St. Elmo is frozen in time. The population is zero, but the buildings remain largely intact, making it a popular destination for ghost hunters and history buffs. It's rumored to be haunted by Annabelle Stark, one of the last residents who refused to leave even as the town died around her. Visitors report hearing footsteps in empty buildings and seeing curtains move in windows with no wind. Some folks say they've felt cold hands touch their shoulders. Others report hearing voices calling their names from abandoned hotels. Colorado's most photogenic ghost town, perfect for Instagram, terrifying for overnight stays. Walking through a perfectly preserved 1920s Main Street at sunset. Everything's still there. The general store, the saloon, the hotel, except the people. It feels like everyone just vanished mid-sentence, and you're walking through a moment frozen in time. St. Elmo doesn't feel abandoned. It feels paused. Would you spend the night in St. Elmo? Yes or no? Drop your answer below. Known as one of the most violent and lawless towns in the Old West, and locals say the ghosts of gunfighters still haunt the cemetery. Founded in 1875 after silver was discovered, Frisco was a boom town known for shootouts, vigilante justice, and chaos. At its peak, there was at least one murder per day. The population is zero now, abandoned by the early 1900s after the mines dried up. The history is brutal. Frequent gunfights, hangings, and murders made Frisco one of the deadliest places in America. Visitors report spectral figures near the old Horn Silver mine and the feeling of being watched in the cemetery. One visitor said they felt someone grab their shoulder near the graveyard. No one was there. The Wild West, but make it haunted and exponentially more terrifying. Dust blowing through a crumbling mining town under a blood-red sunset. Rusted mine equipment scattered across the desert. And the overwhelming feeling someone, or something, is watching from the mine shaft. Frisco died violently, and it feels like the violence never left. Would you explore Frisco's abandoned mines? Let us know if you're that brave or that reckless. Number 11. Salem, Massachusetts. The site of the infamous witch trials where 19 people were hanged, and locals say the town is still cursed. Back in 1692 to 1693, mass hysteria led to the execution of 19 accused witches and the imprisonment of hundreds more. These days, Salem is a tourist destination with a population of around 44,000, and witch trial history pretty much drives the economy. But, its dark history lingers in ways tourists don't always expect. Haunted locations include Proctor's Ledge, the actual execution site, Burying Point Cemetery, and the Witch House. There's also the Corwin Curse. Giles Corey cursed Salem before his death, and 8 premature deaths followed in the Corwin family shortly after. Tour guides report cold spots at Proctor's Ledge and feeling sudden dread near the hanging site. Some folks say they hear whispers in languages they don't recognize. It's the only town that turned its darkest chapter into a profitable Halloween industry. Imagine standing at the execution site at dusk. The wind picks up, leaves swirl around your feet, and you swear you hear whispers, faint and desperate like voices trying to tell you something. Would you visit Salem during October? Comment your answer below. Number 10. Ruby, Arizona. Site of a series of gruesome murders, and visitors say the ghosts of miners still haunt the tunnels. Founded during the 19th century silver boom, Ruby was abandoned after mining profits declined. Now it's known for paranormal activity tied to unsolved murders from the 1920s and 30s. The population is zero. The history is dark. Multiple murders, including store owners gunned down during robberies, created a legacy of fear that never left. Reports of chilling presences and faint voices at murder sites are common. The mining tunnels are said to be haunted by former workers who died in collapses and accidents. One visitor said they heard pickaxe sounds echoing from a sealed mine shaft. No explanation. It's Arizona's answer to Silent Hill, but with better weather and honestly infinitely worse vibes. Picture walking through abandoned buildings at sunset. The shadows grow longer, the temperature drops, and you hear footsteps behind you. When you turn around, no one's there. Ruby doesn't just feel abandoned, it feels angry. Would you explore Ruby's tunnels? Yes or no? Drop your answer below. Number 9, St. Francisville, Louisiana. Named one of the most haunted places in America, and locals report apparitions, voices, and doors slamming on their own. Home to the Myrtles Plantation, one of the most haunted sites in the United States, St. Francisville has deep ties to the Civil War and slavery. The population is around 1,600, and paranormal tourism drives the local economy. The Myrtles Plantation reports constant ghost sightings, mysterious handprints that appear on mirrors, and voices calling from empty rooms. The town also served as a cemetery for soldiers from the nearby Battle of Port Hudson during the Civil War. A local resident reported seeing a woman in white walking through walls at the Myrtles. Others report being touched, pushed, or spoken to by unseen presences. When your town's main industry is ghost tours, you know history got dark fast. Imagine staying overnight at a plantation surrounded by centuries-old oak trees. You hear footsteps upstairs, heavy, deliberate, but you're alone. The floor creaks, a door slams, and you realize this isn't a tour anymore. Would you spend the night at the Myrtles Plantation? Let us know in the comments. If you're still here, congrats. You're braver than 90% of people who clicked away after seeing Centralia's burning ground. But we're just getting started. The top 8 include a town the government literally erased, a place where the sun doesn't rise for months and one so toxic it killed children just from playing outside. Let's keep going. Number 8. Body, California. One of the most famous ghost towns in America, and folks say anyone who takes something from Body will be cursed. Founded during the California Gold Rush, Body boomed in the late 1800s with a population of nearly 10,000. Today, it's a state historic park, kind of preserved in a state of arrested decay. The population is 0, but rangers report constant paranormal activity. There's even a documented curse. Hundreds of people who took rocks, wood, or artifacts from Bodhi have mailed them back with letters describing terrible luck, accidents, illness, and even death. The curse is so well known there's a museum exhibit dedicated to returned items and apology letters. Rangers report seeing figures in windows, hearing saloon music at night, and finding objects moved in locked buildings. California's most cursed souvenir. Walking through a preserved Old West town under a full moon. Buildings creak in the wind. You see a shadow move in a second-story window, but no one's been up there in 100 years. Body doesn't want you to forget it, and if you try, it'll remind you. Would you risk taking a souvenir from Bodhi? Let us know if the curse is worth it. Number 7. Gary, Indiana. A once thriving steel town where the violent crime rate is among the highest in the nation and entire neighborhoods are abandoned. Gary was founded in 1906 by U.S. Steel and named after the company's chairman. At its peak in the 1960s, the population was over 170,000. Today, it's under 70,000. That's a nearly 60% population collapse. The median home price is around $50,000, but entire blocks are vacant. The violent crime rate is more than 4 times the national average. Abandoned buildings outnumber occupied ones in some neighborhoods. Locals say certain areas feel post-apocalyptic. Deindustrialization destroyed Gary. When the steel mills closed, the economy collapsed and the city never recovered. Driving through Gary at night feels like driving through a war zone. Abandoned factories loom in the darkness. Streetlights are broken. Houses are burned out. And you get the sense you're being watched from empty windows. Gary is a warning about what happens when an entire city is built around one industry that dies. Would you drive through Gary at night? Be honest in the comments. Number 6. Kennecott, Alaska. An abandoned copper mining town in the middle of the Alaskan wilderness, where temperatures drop to 40 below zero and isolation is absolute. Kennecott operated from 1911 to 1938, producing over $200 million in copper. When the mines closed, workers abandoned everything. Today, it's a national historic landmark, but it's also one of the most isolated ghost towns in America. The population is zero year-round, though a few seasonal workers maintain the site in summer. The nearest town is hours away. In winter, Kennecott is completely cut off. Temperatures plummet, snow buries buildings, and the darkness lasts for months. Visitors report an overwhelming sense of isolation and the eerie feeling of being watched from the mountains, Alaska's most beautiful and terrifying ghost town. Imagine being surrounded by towering mountains and glaciers. Snow covers everything, the wind howls, and you realize if something goes wrong, no one is coming. Kennecott is beautiful, but it's also a reminder of how unforgiving nature can be. Would you visit Kennecott in winter? Let us know if you're that fearless. Number 5. Jerome, Arizona. Built on the side of a mountain, Jerome is known as the most vertical ghost town in America, and locals say it's haunted by miners who died in explosions and collapses. Founded in the 1870s, Jerome was a booming copper mining town with a population of 15,000. Today, it's around 450. The town literally slid down the mountain during mining operations. Buildings shifted, roads cracked. Some structures are now several feet from their original foundations. The underground tunnels are said to be haunted by miners who died in accidents. Visitors report hearing explosions, feeling cold drafts in sealed tunnels, and seeing shadowy figures. The Jerome Grand Hotel, a former hospital, is one of the most haunted buildings in Arizona. Guests report apparitions, voices, and objects moving on their own. Arizona's most haunted hillside. Standing on a street that's slowly sliding down a mountain, you hear rumbling from below. The ground shifts slightly, and you wonder if the ghosts are trapped in the tunnels, or if the mountain itself is angry. Jerome feels unstable in every sense of the word. Would you stay at the Jerome Grand Hotel? Comment below if you dare. Number 4. Whittier, Alaska. An entire town of 200 people living in one building where the sun doesn't rise for months, and isolation drives people to madness. Whittier is accessible only by a single-lane tunnel shared with trains. Nearly the entire population lives in Baggage Towers, a 14-story Cold War-era military building. The building contains apartments, a school, a post office, a general store, and a police station. You never have to leave. In winter, the sun barely rises. Darkness lasts for months. The tunnel closes during avalanches, cutting the town off completely. Locals report extreme cabin fever, paranoia, and psychological breakdowns. One resident said living in Whittier feels like being trapped in a psychological experiment. You start to forget what the outside world feels like. When your entire town is one building and the sun disappears for months, the line between reality and isolation starts to blur. Imagine living in a concrete tower surrounded by snow and darkness. You see the same faces every day, the same hallways, the same walls, and slowly you start to wonder if you'll ever leave. Whittier isn't just isolated, it's claustrophobic. Could you live in Whittier through winter? Let us know in the comments. Number 3. Pittsburgh, California. Not Pennsylvania. So this is a small Northern California town with one of the highest cancer rates in the state. And, well, locals blame decades of industrial pollution that nobody really talks about. Pittsburgh, California, has a population of around 75,000, but it's surrounded by oil refineries, chemical plants, and heavy industry. For decades, locals have reported elevated cancer rates, respiratory illness, and just plain environmental contamination. Studies have shown higher than average levels of toxic emissions in the air. The median home price is about $500,000, but, a lot of residents say they can't leave because property values are tied to an area nobody really wants to move into. Folks describe a real sense of being trapped in a poisoned town. One resident put it bluntly, "We know the air is killing us, but where else can we go?" Industrial contamination and economic entrapment make Pittsburgh a slow-motion disaster. Living in a town where the air smells like chemicals, you watch the refineries burn at night, you hear about neighbors getting sick, and you realize the town's economy depends on the very industries that are poisoning it. Pittsburgh isn't a ghost town, but it's slowly becoming one. And honestly, the scariest part? Most people don't even know it exists. Would you live in Pittsburgh, California? Be honest below. Number 2. Times Beach, Missouri. This was a town so contaminated with dioxin that the entire population was evacuated and the town was demolished by the federal government. Back in the 1970s, waste oil contaminated with dioxin, one of the most toxic substances on Earth, was sprayed on dirt roads in Times Beach to control dust. The contamination was discovered in 1982, and the EPA ordered a complete evacuation. The entire population of over 2,000 people was relocated. The town was bulldozed. Today, Times Beach no longer exists. It's been converted into Route 66 State Park, but, signs still warn visitors about residual contamination. Dioxin exposure causes cancer, birth defects, and immune system damage. The federal government paid $33 million to buy out every resident. When your entire town is literally poisoned and the government has to erase it from the map, something went catastrophically wrong. Imagine living in a town where the ground itself is toxic, children played in contaminated soil, families breathed poisoned air, and when the truth came out, the only solution was to delete the town entirely. Times Beach is a warning about what happens when profit comes before safety. Would you visit Route 66 State Park knowing what's beneath it? Let us know. Number 1. Picher, Oklahoma. This is the most toxic town in America, where lead poisoning was so severe the government evacuated everyone and declared it uninhabitable for 1,000 years. Picher was a lead and zinc mining town that boomed in the early 1900s. At its peak, the population was over 20,000. But decades of mining left behind massive piles of toxic waste called chat piles, contaminated water, and lead dust that just blew through the streets. By the 1990s, children in Picher had blood lead levels so high they suffered brain damage, developmental delays, and organ failure. In 2006, the EPA declared Picher one of the most toxic places in America. Then, in 2008, an EF4 tornado destroyed much of the town. The federal government offered buyouts, and by 2009, Picher was officially disincorporated. Today, the population is near zero. The chat piles remain, the water is still poisoned, and the land is considered uninhabitable for at least 1,000 years. One former resident said, "We didn't just lose our town, we lost our health, our children's future, and any chance of going back." When your town is so poisoned the government tells you it won't be safe for a millennium, that's not just tragic. It's honestly terrifying. Driving through Picher today, you see abandoned homes, toxic waste piles, and warning signs everywhere. The wind blows lead dust across empty streets, and you realize this isn't a ghost town, it's a graveyard. Picher is the ultimate American nightmare, a town that sacrificed everything for industry, and industry left it to die. Whether a town is begging you to move in or begging you to stay out, every one of these places is responding to the same pressure. A world where population, economics, and land are shifting faster than governments can keep up. Some towns lost their industries. Others were poisoned by them. Some were abandoned after disasters. Others are still inhabited by people who can't afford to leave. But here's the truth. Nobody really talks about. These towns are warnings. They show us what happens when economic growth is prioritized over safety, when industries collapse without backup plans, when environmental damage is ignored until it's just too late. Centralia is still burning. Picher is still toxic. Cairo is still collapsing. And new towns are being added to this list every year. This isn't just about creepy places. It's about the dark side of the American economy, the cost of progress, and the communities left behind when the money runs out. These towns didn't just die, they were killed. by neglect, greed, and a system that values profit over people. If you found this eye-opening, hit subscribe because next week we're covering the countries offering free citizenship, the cities secretly restricting cash, and the nations quietly collapsing in slow motion. This is World Economics Explained, where we don't just tell you the stories everyone else covers, we show you the economic forces behind them, the data nobody talks about, and the future most folks refuse to see. See you in the next one.